Thank you. So, welcome again. And as I mentioned, today we're talking about accelerating your career journey with social media. And I know that this topic is really one that comes into things when we talk about networking. So, hopefully, you will be able to see how great this is and why you should be using it. So my first question to you is, are you purposefully using social media to accelerate your career journey? So thinking about some of the most common platforms, for me anyway, I think of Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse now, YouTube, obviously. There are certainly other ones, and depending on where you are in the world, I know in China, especially things like WeChat are very popular. So, when you are on your journey, think about where it is that you spend your time, and then you'll see why this becomes such an important topic. So, are you using social media? Yes, no, why? If you are live, please feel free to comment in the chat with where you are on this spectrum. Yes, you're purposefully using social media to accelerate your career journey, or no, you're not. So in today's session, we're going to be doing a few things. We're going to be talking about your high vibe soundtrack. So we will talk about that in a moment. We're going to be talking about social media usage trends around the world. We'll be talking about the social media context in terms of recruiting, because obviously that's slightly different still. We will be talking a little bit about LinkedIn, and then we're going to talk about thinking outside the norm. And specifically today, we'll be talking a bit about Twitter and about Clubhouse for job seekers. And then we're going to wind up this session with you making 3 specific actions that you are going to take moving forward. Because knowledge is brilliant, but knowledge and action, knowledge and implementation, that is what is absolutely key. So that is what I am encouraging for you today. So you've been duly warned. By the end of this session, you will have 3 specific actions, but I'm not going to give you those actions. You are going to be deciding them based on what it is that we're talking about today. The first thing I want us to talk about, though, is your high vibe soundtrack. What is a high vibe soundtrack, Gina? Actually, it's exactly how it sounds. It is tracks, different bits of music that lift your spirits. And I really want you to be aware of what those tracks are. They might be the same tracks that you need to use when you're in the gym, right? That's what it might be. Because when it comes to job seeking and applications, I believe that your energy is everything. So it's not surprising if, even if you're at the beginning of the job searching journey, sometimes it just feels like it's a little bit of a slog. And that's not the energy that I want you to bring to this search. So have a think to yourself now, note it down, write down what your high vibe soundtrack might include. If Neil is still around, I might ask him what one of his are. For me, soca music is huge, right? So this is like the Caribbean carnival music, often from Trinidad and Barbados in terms of my preference, but there is soca from all over. And it is that kind of really cool party vibe for me. That will have me dancing around. And if I am writing CVs and cover letters, if I'm updating my LinkedIn profile, whatever else, that will have me in a really good energy. Neil, if you're around, I'd love you to let me know what yours is, but don't worry if you're not.
I am, I'm here. So just about. I go through phases. So recently it's been like really relaxed, like chill hop music.
Nice.
And that's getting me
Okay, that's
through.
kind of like cool bar kind of music in my head.
Exactly, yeah, and that gets me through. Like, but then sometimes I'll listen to something like a little bit more trancey and a little bit faster if I need to get some work done really quickly.
Amazing.
It fluctuates between the two.
No, that is awesome. Yeah, and that's what I think. Figure out what it is for you. Figure out what it is that are your songs. I also love the Lizzo track, "Good as Hell." Like, I just think it's amazing. There's something about it that's just like, yeah, makes me kind of wanna strut and feel great. So that is where I want us to start, and that is what I want you to imagine throughout this session, and also most importantly, when you're actually on the process of your job hunt. Secondly, let's talk about social media trends around the world, because what we're talking about today, of course, is accelerating your career journey with social media. So these stats are courtesy of We Are Social and Hootsuite. We think it's important for you to understand where statistics are when they get thrown at you. And they are for January 2021. And as you can see here, just from looking at this, you know, the total number of active social media numbers, which, as they emphasize, may not represent unique individuals, but let's work with some big numbers here, is 4.2 million. Now, what that means in terms of social media users as a percentage of the global population, that means if we're looking at these numbers and interpreting them in the way that I am, that means that half of the people in the world are using some kind of social media. Now, this number is increasing. So in case you're wondering what the trend is, have we plateaued? You know, haven't people been on social media on Facebook since 2007? Is it really increasing? Yes, it is. People are increasingly spending their time on social media, and that number is increasing as well. The last statistics are in relation to the percentage of social media users accessing via their mobile. And as you can see, that is nearly 100% of people. So these little addictive devices that we carry in our hands or in our pockets or in our purses, we are spending a lot of time on social media. So this is one of the reasons why it's a really important tool to purposefully activate for your own career journey in terms of moving it forward. So the world's most used social media platforms include Facebook and YouTube. That probably won't be a surprise. Messenger apps are on there as well. So WhatsApp is on there, Facebook Messenger, Instagram. Those are some of the most popular, but have a look at TikTok, right? And I know, oh goodness, one of the speakers, and she was great, and I'm not going to remember her name. She was talking about TikTok, and I could see in the chat that it was really inspiring people to think about what it is that you could do with that when it comes to your career development. So you can see just from this where the popularity really is. And towards the bottom of this list, you have things like Snapchat, Pinterest, Reddit, Twitter, and Quora as well. Now, what you don't have on here is Clubhouse. And this is an app that is still in beta, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit more. But as a heads up to what I'm going to be saying about it, it is an absolute game changer when it comes to networking, and therefore when it comes to your own career journey and development. So again, that's a little bit of a preview in terms of where I'm going to be going with this when it comes to things that you really could be doing, some of those things that you could be putting on your list in terms of how you are going to accelerate your career journey with social media. So let's talk about social media quickly in terms of context when it comes to recruitment. So again, so you know where the statistics come from. These are courtesy of an organization called Socially Recruited. And as it sounds, they talk about using social media in recruitment, and their clients would be the organizations. So naturally, there is a stake there when it comes to convincing organizations of the importance of using social media. And with that context, that's the lens at which you can look at this, and hopefully you will find it incredibly useful. So what they've shared is that 2020 was a year where companies adopted new technology to continue working through the pandemic. We all know that, we were here. And social media recruitment statistics show that there was a surge in social media usage in the recruitment industry. So what they talk about is how, according to Personnel Today, COVID-19 triggered a historically quick adoption of technology. So you will know that different countries, different parts of the world have their targets when it comes to whether it's things like broadband being rolled out, or certainly how technology is being used. And during the pandemic, technology usage grew, and growth that was expected to take 5 years only took 8 weeks to reach those expected levels. So I want you to pause on that idea for a moment, just to realize how huge and how integral technology now is in terms of our lives. So this includes video conferencing. Anybody who has had an interview recently will know that software like HireVue is increasingly popular, and you only have to go as far as this particular Easter career hunt to know that this Easter job hunt to know that that it is being used, and I know that there were some tips in one of the earlier sessions. So what Socially Recruited tells their prospective and current clients is that only 20% of job seekers are actually actively looking for a job. When you only post your jobs on job boards, you miss out on 80% of the market. Now, the increasing amount of organizations that are buying into that and believe that and see it to be true, they are increasingly activating audiences on different platforms. What do those different platforms include? Well, it might be email, it might be other aspects and corners of the internet, but it certainly includes social media as well. So they talk about reaching active and passive job seekers on global platforms that aren't typically used for recruitment, like Google, Facebook, apps, and websites. So I ask you again, just in case your question has shifted within the past 10 minutes, your answer has shifted. Are you purposefully using social media to accelerate your career journey? Yes, no, and why? So if you want to think about that as, will you be using social media to accelerate your career journey? That's another way that you can consider that question. Let's start on LinkedIn, which hosts more than 720 million professional profiles. They would say that it means nearly an unlimited supply of network connections and job opportunities. And looking at those numbers, I would certainly agree. Now, we can see a huge amount of usage in the US, in Canada, throughout Europe, and you can see that this is global, from Mexico to South Africa, from the UAE to Japan, right? LinkedIn is an incredibly popular platform. And when it comes to our personal brand, all you need to do is actually put your name into Google if you're a LinkedIn user. And more often than not, your LinkedIn profile is what will appear first, even if you have an active presence on other spaces. It would certainly appear on the first page. But the volume of people that use LinkedIn means that that is often the first thing that people will look at about you. So it's a really, really important space to be in. So 40 million people use LinkedIn to search for jobs each week. And in 2020 alone, LinkedIn saw a 55% increase in conversations among connections. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and you are using it kind of just as an online CV, firstly, well done for being there anyway. That is important. That is great. But there are so many other ways that you can be using the platform. There are different features and products within it. where you can build your visibility, your personal brand, and things that you can do include writing articles, writing posts. Obviously, you can share things that you consider to be valuable. You can share video. You can share audio, for example. I have a podcast called Dive Into Your Career, and I will do these kind of audio snippets and I will share them over to LinkedIn. And then within the comments or within the post, I can put a link to the whole podcast episode, for example, right? This is something that people can share on LinkedIn. They can also go live. Certainly some users can, but everybody can apply. And it's a feature that we are seeing more and more. Now, if you are watching this in real time here, then it means that just a few days ago, LinkedIn started rolling out some exciting new features. So on a kind of equality and inclusion type level, we will increasingly see that we can include our pronouns, right? So she, her, he, him, they, their, whatever people's chosen pronouns might be. You might have noticed on LinkedIn that actually became a popular thing for people to kind of hack their name and include it within that. But now that's going to be a separate feature. There's also going to be a content creator mode, right? And that now exists. People can turn that on. It hasn't rolled out everywhere, and they normally start things in certain markets. But what it means, if you are a content creator, if you were putting things out there in the world, it means that you can toggle to turn on content creator mode, and your about information isn't going to be the first thing that people see. They will get to see your content in a certain way. So as that gets rolled out, if you like, if it's relevant for you, that is something that you can be checking out as well. Another thing is that there's going to be a video option when it comes to your profile as well. So that will be available right at the top. So between that and the open to work frames, the hiring frames, all of these things, you can see that LinkedIn is really, really working hard for you to be able to accelerate your own career journey. So do use the features that are interesting to you and that makes sense. And feel free to experiment and swap back. It's absolutely fine. So LinkedIn is a platform that you can use in a really purposeful way. Now, it wasn't surprising that I was going to be talking about LinkedIn as part of this, because that is the platform that we tend to think about when we think about accelerating our career journey with social media. So we're going to talk about a couple of others. We're going to talk about Twitter, and we're going to talk about Clubhouse. Other social media platforms, of course, as I've said, can include Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. These aren't going to be covered as part of today's session, but there certainly are ways that you can elevate your potential on those platforms too. So Twitter describes itself as what's happening in the world and what people are talking about right now. Now, as we know, it's popular with politicians and celebrities, and we can probably all think of one politician that got himself banned a little bit before the end of his term. It's not a name that I even said when he was a politician, so I won't mention it now. But often when we think of Twitter, we might think of those kind of really big names that use it. And one of the things for you to remember, though, is that it's also used by organizations through the world, right? So when it comes to your job hunt, right? Let's think about the process for a minute. You need to find the opportunity. You need to apply for the opportunity. When things go as well as we all want it to, there will likely be an interview or interviews, depending on the organization, as part of the process. And when you are preparing for that, of course, it's important to go to the organization's website. It's important to really, really get to know it. I mean, I always say to my clients that when organizations are considering their candidates, broadly speaking, there are two things that they look for. Now, under those two things, there are lots of things. So it's not quite that simple. But if I was going to broadly describe the two things that they're looking for, one would be, does this candidate have the experience to do this job, right? Now, under experience comes qualifications, comes their previous work experience and volunteering. Maybe it is their skills, both transferable and technical. Maybe it's their languages that they use, right? Whether that is actual languages as we think about it, so kind of Spanish, Mandarin, whatever it is that's needed, or whether it is languages in terms of technology. So these are the things that we know, right? And those are the things that we talk about and we prepare for. The other side of things, however, is this person a good fit for our organization? Now, we can have debates about this from here till, for another 24 hours if we wanted to keep going and see how Neil does. But,
absolutely not.
Yeah, should we not do that? But, so some organizations will still talk about cultural fit. That is still things that people talk about, whether somebody is the right fit for the culture of an organization. In some spaces, that's become a little bit more objectionable on a diversity, equity, and inclusion level, because potentially when people think about cultural fit, they might think about, is this person like me, right? But if somebody is more evolved than that, which is what we hope we will be seeing from organizations, then they're looking for potential. But either way, they're still looking for fit. And that can often be demonstrated by enthusiasm. And sometimes it's really hard to figure out, well, how do I build really awesome enthusiasm for what I'm applying for based on what they share on their website? Sometimes it's possible, but let me tell you, if you are interested in working in finance and you go to Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, UBS, maybe throw in some of the professional services firms, right? PwC, KPMG, whoever it might be. If you look at the values of their organizations and you look at some of the general things that they share on their website, it's brilliant and it's useful, but it's not always a huge differentiator necessarily. So they're global, they're well respected, all of these things, right? That I'm sure all career coaches and recruiters and indeed organizations have seen in cover letters and applications. So if it is something that everybody's saying, this is one of the things that Toby's been talking about on this session, if it's something that everybody's saying, is it worth you spending so much time to say it? So that is a question that I will leave with you. But what I'm saying to you is that Twitter, if an organization uses Twitter, Twitter is your absolute key to finding more information and useful information and different information, that organizations that are incredibly similar, they are sharing very different things on Twitter. Again, disclaimer, if they're using Twitter, right? And that's where we really get a sense of culture. It's like getting the inside scoop. So before we go too much further, I do want to say that Twitter comes with a mental health warning. And it would not be responsible of me to advocate using it as a tool just generally, because I know certainly in my experience, it can be one of the more toxic corners of the internet, right? The minute that you get all kinds of unsolicited opinions flying, it can be tricky. It can be tricky. So here's the thing that I want to let you know. If you're on Twitter, then of course you can be using it as, from when you were signed in and all of that stuff. But I warn you, you might get caught down the rabbit hole of all the sorts of things that are going on in the world. Good, and as is so often shared, not great, right? Stuff that might kind of really be pulling on your heartstrings and be a little bit heavy. So what I want to let you know is you can do exactly what I'm talking about by going into Google right? Or your search engine of choice. I don't know why I even say that. I think most people will be using Google. And you put in the name of your organization and Twitter. So you can see in how I've demonstrated it here, right? Dyson Twitter, Department for Education Twitter, Adobe Twitter, whatever it might be. And then you might find that, like with something like Adobe, they'll have Adobe UK, they'll have some for different countries. And then you can go and explore. And then what you see is some of the kind of stuff that they're sharing, and this is all a bit different, and this is what you can be talking about, right? If you are writing that cover letter, look at your most recent cover letter or the one that you're working on at the moment. And if the only place that you mention the organization is that penultimate paragraph, if you are waiting for the hiring manager or recruiter or whoever it is that is doing the initial sift, if you are waiting for them to get all the way to the bottom of a piece of A4 to see a few lines about what it is you enjoy about their company and why you want to join, and if there's a chance that what you're sharing is stuff that a bunch of other people are going to be saying, you're going to want to be checking this out. Because you can see with Adobe, for example, they talk about a story of a lady called Irene Pereira. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her surname correctly, but you will see that you could have checked out that piece of content that they shared, or any other that really speaks to you. And you can be making some kind of commentary on that, right? You will attract the attention of the people making the hiring decisions, because you're answering that question, that sometimes unspoken question of, is this person a good fit for our organization, right? So you can do that by really enthusiastically looking at what it is they're sharing. Are they sharing podcasts? Are they sharing webinars? Free webinars, by the way, because I clicked on one recently when I was doing this exercise with a student, and to access the webinar, it was €1,700. And I thought, it's not that deep. It's not that important. But normally there's so much free content available that, that it's then about you accessing it. And listen, be the candidate who listens to the podcast, and maybe somewhere at the beginning of the letter or somewhere within your interview, you can say, it's amazing. I recently heard, Satna Braithwaite from your organization talking about this on this podcast. Some of my main takeaways were X, Y, and Z, and this is one of the many reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about the prospect of joining your team and positively contributing to the work that you're doing as an organization, right? That is not kind of a find replace, as you will find in so many cover letters and applications, and even interviews where it can be a little bit anonymous. So you can also see some of the other things shared here. NHS Health Careers has something that says definitely not an April Fool, and it takes you over to a link where you can do a quiz in relation to careers. And even Forbes, right, has been talking about how, in a sign that the pandemic may be behind us, JP Morgan is bringing back interns for the summer. So the nature of Twitter being a kind of 280 ever-moving character feast means that that there is constantly new information, again, if an organization is using the platform. So that is it for Twitter. I hope that has helped you see how you can accelerate your career journey using that platform, and also with all the disclaimers, how you can do it in a way that you're not falling down the Twitter rabbit hole. You're just going to the organization that you want to check out and see if they're using it. The last social media platform I'm going to be talking to you about today is Clubhouse. This is the new kid on the block. See what I did there? Yeah, showing my age a bit. It is an audio-only app which is still invite-only and in beta at the time of doing this session. And it really has the potential to be an absolute game changer when it comes to accelerating your journey towards your career. And also, importantly, because as I stressed at the beginning, this is something that's really important to me, making that fun. right? Doing things in a different way, using different senses, meeting people in a different way. And yeah, it can be really, really enjoyable. So again, at the moment in real time, it is Apple only and you require an invite, but it is soon going to be more widely available via Android. They believe by May 2021. That might shift, but that is the current chat and the current timeline. So genuine connections are built through real-time voice-to-voice communication, and users can enter rooms on a variety of topics. So for example, I met the lovely Neil in one of those kind of clubhouse rooms where there were conversations about careers in technology. So that, I suppose, is a very real example for you over in terms of how a connection can be built and people can collaborate on different fronts. Likewise, we're really starting to see people get jobs via Clubhouse and via relationships that they've started to build via Clubhouse, and it's really, really exciting. So again, how does it work? Really quick rundown for you. Once you're on the platform, typically you set up your profile under your real name, not a pseudonym. You confirm what your interests are. You write a biography. This is essential. If you take one thing away, if you take one thing away from this session in terms of using social media, if Clubhouse is one of the things that you're going to be using, please don't be on there with no description in your biography, because then you are depending on only the times when you are speaking in a room for people to be able to understand what you're about. So put some information in your biography as soon as you sign up. And the biographies can change all the time. You can be in a room listening to a conversation. You can be on a stage and ready to contribute, and you can be changing your biography, right? So please do not wait for the perfect biography. It doesn't exist. Just start putting information on there about you, because how else can we get to know you and decide if we want to follow you, which means that we'll be able to see what kind of spaces that you're going into. So that is really, really important. And this connects to what I say next, right? Follow interesting people. So your hallway, right? Your hallway, your feed is essentially dependent on who it is that you follow. So follow interesting people, but at the start, do just enjoy experimenting. You can be more curated as you discover the platform more. So you can listen in rooms, contribute to rooms with questions and comments, and also start your own. And so when you hear me talking about rooms, I wanted to at least give you a visual, which is why I wanted to be quite persistent about getting this presentation to show, because otherwise it's quite hard to understand if you're not on the platform. So these are some of the rooms that I have been in recently, and I just took some screenshots because I knew that I was going to be here with you.
Can't believe I'm not on these screenshots.
Do you know, I was going to say, the only reason why is you have been in absolute creator mode this week, haven't you?
That's true, yeah.
Right?
I've missed the last like 2 weeks of sessions, so yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the reason why. So these I literally took within the past couple of days, and I was going to say, normally Neil would be front and center. So in all of these rooms, right, Neil, you've contributed to each one of these rooms.
You know what? When you're talking about it,
because that is new, but hopefully we'll get you on there soon.
Yeah, well, I'll come on the Monday one soon. I nearly toggled my mic when you started talking about Clubhouse. That's how long I've been up, thinking that you'd be able to see.
What do we do on Clubhouse? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It absolutely becomes second nature. But yeah, this is what rooms look like. Normally, you will see Neil in them as well. And, you know, I've been really enjoying, as somebody who supports people with their careers, for me, it's always important to keep up to date. So I love going into the rooms that have doctors and medical professionals, which I clearly am not. I was in a room yesterday with events professionals, and it's great to hear people talking about how events are coming back, but then they're talking about some of the challenges when it comes to hiring and how people are being treated, and are people kind of, lowballing people when it comes to salary because there's so much need in terms of that particular sector. So, you really can flit in and out of what you're interested in professionally, certainly, which is what we're talking about today, but also personally, right? There were incredible creators on the platform. And one of the most fun things that I did, which has nothing to do with career, is I think it was at the end of February, I attended a Clubhouse, so audio only, performance of Dreamgirls, the musical. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So again, I wasn't there beginning to end, but it was so cool to see how people are using their skills and their talents on this platform. So those people who were part of that certainly are also accelerating their journey with social media. So you can also see what I mean by people start clubs. So again, these are some of the clubs that you will certainly see Neil going along to as well. So that is what I want to share with you. And my question for you now, and I'll stop sharing the screen in a moment, is what 3 actions will you take following today's session? What 3 actions will you take? And this is a question for you, whether you're here live or whether you're watching this on a replay, right? So if you're on a replay and you're not kind of, maybe necessarily that engaged or thinking, oh, do I need to do all of the things that Gina's talking about? Yeah, you'd still do. This is what's going to help you get the most out of the session. So think about those 3 things. So before I stop sharing my screen, I just want to remind you what we talked about today, which was your high vibe soundtrack, which you can play to lift your spirits, social media usage trends. We looked at LinkedIn with a bit of a reminder of how you can use it and maybe some new features that you're not using yet. We talked about some other social media networks that you can use, specifically Twitter and Clubhouse for job seekers, ideally. And of course, building your network, because you should be building your network all the time, but that is a conversation for another day. And then we talked about your 3 specific actions. So there are a few details there in terms of where I can be found and how you can connect with me. But let me stop sharing for now and see. Am I back? I'm back.
We're back. Okay,
so I hope that was really useful.
It was. That was fantastic. There's a lot of people have been talking just about LinkedIn today. We've had a lot of talks about LinkedIn, the efficacy of LinkedIn. All great talks, by the way.
Of course, you've had great sessions.
Because it's from a professional point of view, that's often. Actually, we had Trish Mullen earlier talking about TikTok, which just blew my mind.
Trish, you heard me mention, right, when I said there was somebody earlier. She is fabulous, by the way.
She had a fan club by the end.
Oh my God!
Someone called Kit saying, "I'm creating the Trish Mullen fan club," and 9 people went, "Yes, I'm in. Where do we sign?"
Yeah.
I said, Trish, you're gonna have some groupies by the end of tomorrow.
Yeah, she is awesome. I loved hearing her talk about Clubhouse and about TikTok. Yeah. You see, oh my God, we're so indoctrinated now.
It's so bad, isn't it?
We really are. It's technically an addiction.
So a few people have asked about Clubhouse. I think we had questions up here. How do I get an invite from Clive Goodman? If you've got an iPhone, Clive, I've got invites. I've got 3 invites going. So just
absolutely, and I have loads because I think because I probably hadn't been reaching out recently and saying, does anybody need an invite? So to get an invite, people do need to have your phone number. Yeah. So that's what it is. People can't email it to you or anything like that. So if you're happy to share your number with Neil initially, as he mentioned, he has some invites, or you're very welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, and of course, private message me a number. And then I am, as long as you're on Apple, obviously, I'm more than happy to share invites as well for Clive and anybody else who needs one. So
we have a great, by the way, fantastic talk. Honestly, talking about the different social media platforms, and like I was saying about what Trish did earlier. Not really seen much of that. So it's really insightful, really insightful, especially about Twitter and everything else. So thank you for that.
Brilliant. I'm glad. Thank you.
No, it was fantastic, and thank you for not engaging me for the whole hour. I realised while you were speaking that I've never shaved before an event and then needed to shave before I've ended the same event.
And you never will again if this is the one in only 24 hours.
You're the only person to see it, apart from
I have
Adrian and Jeanette up next, and then we're done.
Yeah, when you said that you were going to be part of each session, because when I first heard about it, I thought that like you were going to line up the people, right? Yeah. And of course you might be part of the sessions, that makes sense. But when you said that you were going to do that for the whole 24 hours, I was like, this man is visionary and insane.
People kept telling me that it was impossible, and
That's a good driver, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm a child like that, you know. It's so 10 years ago, someone said, "I bet you can't do a backflip," and they were right. They were right, and I haven't learned from that mistake.
Except this one is going to be victorious. So, I mean, if there were any specific questions.
So we do actually have some that have come through. So we've got Tim here. If you click on the Ask a Question button, do you recommend any Spotify playlists for high vibes?
Oh my goodness, Tim, I don't, and I should. So I will check that out. Please feel free to connect, and that might be something that I can answer better at another time. But that you've given me an action point there, so I've got one of my 3 from this session, because it would be brilliant to share that and also create one, as that's something that I consider to be so important. So thank you, Tim. I don't, but I will. So I have an action point there.
Oh, sorry, I've got a question here. Clive said Clubhouse is a new territory. Let me see. How can members be identified?
So, unlike most of the other social media platforms, actually most people on Clubhouse are, firstly, just using their name. So if you wanted to go in and see whether you know anybody, because it is actually through phone numbers and address books, chances are as you sign up, you will see some options of some of the people that you already know. And then you can search people specifically. Beyond that, in terms of how to purposefully use it, in the way that on LinkedIn, you can search for a specific company, a specific organization, or you can search for a specific job role, right? Whether it's product manager or social media executive or whatever the case might be. You can do a really effective search like that on Clubhouse as well. And then you can be following people who have the job title or who are in the sector or in the company that you are keen to be working in. So while on LinkedIn, we always know the company that people work for. On Clubhouse, that's not necessarily the case. But actually, most people do use their biographies pretty well. So even though your search won't identify everybody from that organization on Clubhouse, it depends whether they've mentioned it. A number of them will have mentioned it. So it's really, really great. It's so effective in terms of, like, this is a place that I'm looking to apply. This is a role that I'm looking to have. Let me look to find people who are in that role, and you're finding them in a conversational space. How amazing is that, right? So yeah, that's
seen so many people have interviews off the back of a Clubhouse call, off the back of one Clubhouse session.
One Clubhouse session.
Yeah, 10. 15.
And we've seen that, haven't we, Neil? Like, we've seen people come up on the stage, been hugely impressive. And that's, I don't mean that especially, like, hugely impressive.
Tomorrow,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just means instant response, right? It doesn't mean that they've been brilliant and their elevator pitch has been perfect. So don't let perfectionism stop you at all. It's actually just the ability to get up there, talk about what it is that you're interested in. What are you into? What are you looking for? What are the kinds of organizations? Often on lots of the big stages, you might have like a load of recruiters in the room right there, and people will be saying, right, as you said, Neil, they'll be saying, contact me tomorrow, send me an Instagram DM, send me a kind of private message via LinkedIn. You also get people who've been like, oh, I've applied for your organization, right? Like, I've applied for a role and I haven't heard anything back. And then you'll have somebody saying, oh, well, send me the requisition number. I will check internally with the hiring manager and see where your application has gotten. These are the conversations that we're seeing. So in real time, it is absolutely phenomenal. I've really kind of described it. I don't know if this is the right thing to say. I'm always quite cautious of words, but like, I kind of feel like it's like LinkedIn or like networking on steroids, right? Connections get built so quickly that it really is incredible. So as I said, if you're on Apple already, get on there now. It would be my advice, and explore and then participate. And if you're on Android, like, absolutely don't stress about it. I know a number of people that dug out old Apple phones or got Apple phones. You don't need to do that necessarily, but the FOMO was real, wasn't it?
The first weekend that I was sent it was back when you only had one invite, right? And you can only invite one. Yeah, back at the beginning.
Back at the beginning, like,
we were cool. We were back in the beginning, Gina. And I remember someone said, "How was your weekend?" I said, "Well, I was on Clubhouse for 48 hours straight," and they went, "Yeah, me too." That's exactly
that is what it was. And actually, Neil, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for any of you guys who aren't on there yet and you're about to jump on there, please don't stress out if your first week is lost to Clubhouse.
Yeah,
like, that's fine. That's part of the process, right?
It was me. Yeah. I mean, luckily I run my own business, so I was like, well, I can move some calls tomorrow. And there's some Clubhouse calls that I really need to be on.
I know, oh my God. And that's really what people do. And mine was that it was between Christmas and New Year. So it was absolutely fine to just like be a bit more chilled and be on there. But also the other thing to remember is you can also just use it as talk radio, right? Yeah. So you don't have to be jumping on a stage and participating and making notes, although notes are useful at times. Sometimes you can just be listening to the conversations, and that's fine. It's like an alternative to putting on whatever else you listen to.
Fantastic, Gina. We've got to move on to Adrian now. But how can people find you?
So probably the easiest way is to find me on LinkedIn. Connect with me there. I will be happy to look out for you and make some connections. And then there are other useful links that I have and that I can share, and I can do so from there. So it's Dive Into Your Career is the name of the organization of the Careers Initiative and the podcast. But yeah, search for me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. But have great next sessions. Thank you for being so interactive, everybody. And I hope to connect with you. It'd be great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gina. And yeah.
Take care. Good luck with the last 2 hours.
Thank you.
Bye.